Hi everyone, I'm back. This is session 7 of Steve's Sleeve, Flesh versus Spirit. If you haven't watched the previous 6 sessions, make sure that you listen to those because it builds a foundation to what I'm about to say today. And now we're going to get into some real meaty stuff. I ended session 6 with Romans 5 verse 12. Let me just repeat that quickly if I can. Romans 5:12 says, "Therefore just as sin entered into this world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way death has come to all men." In that same way as the scripture is saying, this event that I began to mention of at the end of session 6, this event was, we don't realize this, it was so cataclysmic that it has left you and me with less than 1% use of our brain function. Now you're going to say, where did you get that from? Hold that thought for a moment, because I want you to realize we weren't originally created to function with less than 1% of our brain power. And, you know, honestly, so much for the evolutionists. If their theory is correct, or if it were to be correct, then how does one explain that after millions and millions and millions of years of presumed evolvement into a better being, the human species has progressed to a point where they're not even using 1% of their brain power yet? And by the way, that is a statistical, scientific, and biological fact, according to the brain specialists. Now, just think about this for a moment. If I take the engine of your car, and restrict its performance to, let's say, 60% of its total ability, you're going to notice that. You're going to, for sure, put a Formula One car out on the track and restrict it by 5%, and you've got problems. You're not going to be winning the race. If you restrict a Formula One vehicle to less than 1%, the driver may as well put on roller skates and head off down the track with roller skates on, because the car's not going to go anywhere. Now, who has ever stopped really to think about this fact? It's a fact of life. Outside of scripture, it's just a fact of life. Less than 1%. In fact, the most brilliant scientists of all time, the specialists or the scientists or those that are out there putting these stats together, say have used less than 10% of brain functionality or full capacity. So this was a very specific time that the scripture says, many thousands of years ago, when due to the one act of rebellious disobedience, an insidious, deadly virus was granted access into planet Earth. And that virus, the good book tells me, is called sin. It should never have been granted access, but it was. And it entered. But when it did enter, another horrific companion followed hot on its heels, on sin's heels, called death. And as a result of sin coming in and death following, death has been passed on through the infected, natural, genetic DNA and bloodline of mankind to all men and women that live on planet Earth. And that, my friend, is why we found ourselves on death row. Whether you believe the Bible or not, whether you like the thought or not, everybody's going to die at some stage because of this horrific thing called death that followed in on sin. And that's not all. This event, when sin entered, this particular event brings another character onto life's drama stage. This character is a being that is so deceptive and insidious and horrific that he got it right to also steal the very authority that was originally given to mankind to manage, to subdue, and to populate this planet. But before I talk about that wicked creature, let me just unravel some very interesting things about sin's influence over mankind. And the best way that I can explain this inconceivably horrific sin invasion that brought nothing short of massive detrimental consequence beyond what we can possibly comprehend is for me to draw a parallel between your and my life and that of a day-to-day computer that you have on your desk, a PC. Most of you have heard of some of the creators of PCs on this earth. And it doesn't matter who it is or what computer it is, I can guarantee you that it was never in the heart and the mind of the computer designer to design a computer that was going to fail from day dot. In fact, most computer designers, and I would go as far as to say that all of them built the computer originally so that it would function at 100% of its capacity. If that wasn't the case, then they would never expected anything to have moved or to be able to sell the thing in the first place. However, you and I know that when a virus enters a computer that the computer designer and creator designed to function at 100% of its capacity, when that enters and it gets triggered, there's normally a trigger that takes place that will cause that virus to begin to operate. Then the computer suddenly begins to fail from operating like it was originally intended to operate. The problem is no longer the computer. No point in blaming the computer. No point in blaming the computer designer. The problem is the virus that's causing the computer to malfunction. No matter how hard the computer tries to function in the way it was originally intended, once the virus, having entered, is active in the software of the computer, the originally intended perfect operation of its function is corrupted. Can you imagine a computer operating at less than 1% of its full capacity? Now you're beginning to see what has happened to humanity. Have you ever stopped to think about the fact that even with the limitation of less than 1% of our full brain functionality, your physical body is still the most intricately designed robot known to mankind? No one has ever vaguely been able to replicate its function, its complete design and functionality. If you really study how wonderful the human body is, notwithstanding that we have the sin virus in our members, and how wonderful the brain is, and how detailed and complex the design of the spinal column is, the nervous system, our breathing, respiratory system, our digestive and circulatory system, skeletal, musculoskeletal system, our urinary system, and every other system that we are made up of, you should begin to realize that the odds of it coming together as a result of a past Big Bang explosion is probably the most insane belief that any person with one eye and half a brain can have. Now, my friend, this was not the work of a Big Bang past historical event. And as painful as that may be to accept, in our case, there is a genius computer creator. And just as it is in the world of computers, where there are wicked people, in the world of computers where there are wicked people who design viruses with the sole purpose of either corrupting or ideally destroying computers, you can rest assured that the sin virus also came from a very specific creature who is literally hell-bent, excuse the pun, on destroying our physical bodies and our lives. And it doesn't help to blame the computer creator, who in this case is God, when it pertains to our physical bodies, our brains, our mind, and our emotions. Once the virus has entered, God is not to blame. He's not the problem. The virus and the wicked virus designer are to blame. Now, please just follow this parallel. When sin entered into this world, for the Bible tells me it did in Romans chapter 5 and verse 12. Sin entered through one man, and death came as a result of sin. And as a result of death coming, it has been passed on. Death has come to all men. This virus, the sin virus, when it entered, contaminated the functioning performance of God's computer, of mankind. In fact, it not only contaminated mankind, it also contaminated nature, the animals, and in fact the heavens above us and in the world in which we live. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in the next session because we've run out of time. This is Steve of Steve's Sleeves signing off. I'll see you in session 8.